Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Heldt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Welcome back to the podcast. This week, my guest is Glenn Poulos, and he's the founder, vice president, and general manager for Gap Wireless, Inc. Glenn, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Gary. Great to be here.
So, Glenn, besides being the co-founder and managing member and everything, you're also an author and a sales expert. You've been doing this for for at least 3 decades now.
Right.
Kind of tell us some about your background and what you've done, through these, your career, and why that makes you the sales expert.
Sounds good. So funny thing is, my first job, I actually was a civil servant. I worked for the federal government and Environment Canada as an electronic technician. And my boss pulled me aside one day and he said, you're not cut out for the government. You should go work in the private sector. And I recommend you get a job in sales. Right. And so I ended up taking him up on that offer and or that suggestion. And I did actually get a job in sales. And I worked for those guys for about 5 years. And at around the 5-year mark, I approached the owners about a business opportunity to sort of spin a little piece of their business off and create another company which I could become a partner in. Mm-hmm. And they turned me down and said it wasn't a good idea. So I quit my job and I went and did it without them. And right. I ran that company for about 15 years. It's a sales company selling high-tech products from around the world in mainly the Canadian market, but some parts of the US as well, and sold that company. There were some machinations and ups and downs that went along with that sale, which I can talk about at any point, but I ended up having sort of restarting a new business, which I ran for another 15 years. So now we're like 5 years in sales, 15 years, and then another 15. I'm dating myself now, right? And last year I sold that business after 15 years to U.S. private equity, and I did agree to stay on with them for some period, and so I'm working for them now, helping to integrate their Canadian operations for them. But I sold my business to them, and they now own it. And a couple of weeks ago, we changed the name to their name. So we went from being Gap Wireless, which was G and P, those are my initials. Okay. And the A was the vowel I needed in order to create a word. Right. And then we're now NWS Canada and part of NWS in the US, and which is the same kind of business, just a lot bigger than we are. Right. And and that's like the Cook's tour of how I got here 35 years later.
So what is it about sales? Because obviously, I think for somebody to be passionate like you are, you have to really like it. So what about sales really gets you going?
Well, you mean beyond the commission? Or?
Well, yes, beside the pay. Yeah.
So the one thing I always liked about sales was it does allow you to sort of I'm trying to think of the word, but basically crack the code on increasing your income quicker than other kinds of jobs, right? Like if I had just stayed as a technician for the government, I would have gone to, they were called EL1, EL2, EL3 electronic levels, right? I probably would have finished. They probably would have retired me at this age that I'm at now, and I probably would have been EL7, and I would have gone up in the tiers throughout those years, and I might have gone from like 30 grand where I started to 80 grand or something. I don't know, but sales allows you to go 50 grand one year, and then, you can move around, or as your success in the company grows, you can go from 50 to 100K or 200K. And I mean, other jobs don't really allow that. So that's the one, thing that sales allows you. The second thing is that I'm a real kind of like, geek when it comes to like technology and playing with the latest and greatest. And I was always selling high-tech products. And so when you're a salesman, you're selling the latest product. You're not selling 5-year-old technology. So you get to push the latest buttons, show the latest hardware, play with the latest stuff, and sort of keep yourself present in technology each year as it goes along, and not stagnate, in the government. The stuff I was using was 10 years old. Right. And, getting a new piece of equipment was almost impossible. And, so yeah, those are some of the reasons why I really love selling, and also the mobility, right? You can go, you're out on calls, there's a high degree of freedom. You have the freedom to make no money if you're lazy, and you have the freedom to make all sorts of money if you work hard, right? That's an important lesson you have to learn.
Now, you've written a couple books. One of the books is Never Sit in the Lobby. And in there, you talk about selling success, or success in selling involves certain things that you shouldn't do.
Right.
Can you tell us some of those things that you talked about?
Sure. And the one thing, yeah, well, the title is Never Sit in the Lobby. So that's the first thing that you shouldn't do, is first read the title and then don't do what it says, or do what it does, it says to do, right? Never sit in the lobby. Right. So, so the book is really, it's Never Sit in the Lobby, 57 factors for building a business and a career in selling. Right. So it's all sorts of tips. So you can really flip to any point in the book and figure out something that you should do, something that you shouldn't do, or little stories or anecdotes on how I did things, when I was stumped in business or what have you. And, and so it's just peppered with both the do's and the don'ts. Right. But, so never sit in the lobby. So just show up on time, be standing and waiting for your customer. Don't be on your phone. It's just a basic etiquette point, right? It's not rocket science, but you'd be surprised how many times I see sales guys sitting down and the customer comes out and they don't even realize that he walked through the door and he's waiting for them, standing in front of him. The guy's, playing on his phone, right? It's a bad look, right? And another one of the don'ts is never forget a face, right? So I have a rule where before I go to the lobby, I sit in my car, I call up my phone. And if I'm calling on a customer I've been to before, I go through the names of the clients in the account that I've met.
Right.
And I remember their face. Right. So I go to each one. Oh, Sally, right? That's the redhead. Bob, that's the tall guy. Jack, that's the short guy. And I try to remember them and bring their face to the forefront, so that when I see that face, later that day, if I'm in the, if I get past the lobby, then I remember it instantly because I already remembered it. And so I say, "Hey, Sally, great to see you," with no delay. And she's like, "Wow, that guy remembered my name. I haven't seen him in 2 years." And that is really a good look, and it impresses people, and it makes them feel good that you remembered their name and used their name. Right.
Right.
And, one of the things that I always suggest you do is always ask for a mini tour when you're dropping anything off to the customer. Right. And a mini tour is basically a tour that's mini. And what I mean by that is essentially, ask them to look around. If you're showing them something for their new office, ask to see the tour, the little tour around that office. If you're showing them something for the production area, can I see the new production area? Just a quick tour, right?
Right.
Show me the warehouse, the back office, the front office, the upstairs, the downstairs, whatever it is you're selling and why you're there, right? And but try to get past the lobby in some way and have a reason for it, right? Because once you get past that door, then you can practice that rule of never forgetting a face. You can see all those people, and the new guy's going to say, "Wow, Glenn knows everybody. That's incredible." And you can also look around and see whose competitors' logos they're wearing on their t-shirts, right? Whose baseball cap he's got on, the golf balls on the desk, the coffee mug, the mouse pads, and realize, hey, wait a minute, I've got some competition here. Somebody's been dropping off a lot of swag to these guys, and it's not us, right? And those are just some of the little tips and tricks that I do on every time I'm in front of a customer to get a little bit of a leg up on on my competition, right? And one of the other most important lines in the book, it's a don't, is never fax the facts and never ship the shit. Right. And that's the saying. Right. Now, of course, faxes are old. I know that. Right. Everyone's like, "Oh, nobody faxes anymore." And I'm like, yeah, well, don't email it either.
Right.
Drop it off. if the guy asks you for a literature, drop it off. If he asks you for a quote, drop it off. If he asks you for some information, tell him you're on your way there the next day. You'll drop by with the info, with the data sheet and and a few other things. And, the next thing is another rule from the book. When you show up, always have something in your hand and something in your mind, right? Something to give them and something to talk to them about. And again, these are they just stack one on another, right? Never sit in the lobby, never forget a face, always ask for a tour, have something in your hand and something in your mind, never fax the facts, never ship the shit, right? So often people, when they do demos and things, they just ship it in. And the people that get the box that ends up on the guy's floor of his office, he never opens the box.
Right.
2 weeks later, he asks for it back. He never even looked at it, right?
Yeah.
I never do that. And
I mean, it sounds like a lot of the things that you're talking about, the do's and the don'ts, it all goes back to building that relationship as compared to it being a transaction. Even though, you talked earlier about, you want that transaction because obviously that's your commission, but
right.
So much of what you're doing is building a relationship with that customer.
Exactly.
Yeah. In building these relationships with customers, obviously that's something that's very important. And you talked about the faxing and emailing and things like that. How have you evolved things with again, everybody went through COVID and people weren't meeting in person as much and things like that. So how did you kind of transition that or flip it to still be your way, so you still have, I'm going to say, have that control?
Right. Well, during COVID, especially in Canada, we were like locked down. So we didn't have any choice. Nobody could go anywhere.
Right.
Everything was locked up. Nobody would let you in, even if you could go out. And so that was really a one-time slice in time where everything changed. And then the question was, what did we do when it ended? Right. And it took a while for our customers to open their doors again. And it's only been, some little bit of 2022 and most of 2023 that we've been back in front of them.
Right.
And it's been hard for people to mentally, after 2 years at home, get back out on the road. And it's, you have to be sensitive to change. And it was hard change going all of a sudden having to do everything virtually and figuring out how to make numbers. And then all of a sudden how to stop being virtual again and get back on the road and get in front of them. Right. And so as it relates to the balance, it's not like we created a new world that we stayed in permanently, right? Like we created a new way during COVID to get whatever done we needed to get done, but it was just a moment in time. And now we're evolving back into where we were before. It's a new reality, but it's more like it was than what it was during COVID, right? Like these things are hot. The stuff we sell are high ticket items, and it's done face to face, right? Nobody buys a car off the internet. Right. I mean, everyone wants to test drive it. Everyone's going to the dealership. They want to get in the car. They want to smell that new car smell. They want to take it for a test drive. It's the same thing with many items, right? There's some software things that you can get a trial online and do a 30-day trial and buy it, never talk to anyone. But that's not who I'm appealing to. I'm appealing to people that are, bag carrying, quota carrying salespeople that have to go and visit customers and book business. And the only way to do it is face to face, in my opinion. Yes, you can have some of the stuff virtually. Not all the meetings are face to face, but you don't want to default to thinking that you're going to get it done over Zoom, because if you do, what ends up happening is that you don't see that below the camera line, the guy's got a logo on his shirt and it's from your competitor. Right. And, and that the competitor's boxes are sitting on his desk or behind him or in front of him or whatever. And you got to get in front of them to see what they're doing and to see where you fit in the food chain. Right. So that's how we're sort of rationalizing it, but it wasn't easy. And, but most of our guys are pretty much on the road full time now, at this point.
Yeah, I think, I know for me as a business owner, especially being in the accounting world, typically we're not looked at as salespeople.
Right.
So for those business owners that aren't looked that way and haven't had that sales experience, how do you recommend them developing these skills to be able to talk to the customers and possibly the venture capitalists to invest in their business and stuff like that?
Well, they should probably read my book.
Well,
No, I'm just kidding. But it's
right,
true, but I'm kidding, but it's true.
right, right,
And the so I am actually trying to appeal to all people in business that are running a business, not just the sales guy. And
right,
I mean, a lot of what I'm trying to explain to people is the mantra of my book and the company that I run is I try to get across how to get, act, and stay in front of customers and to be a pleasure to do business with always. That's the mantra that I try to live by. And so there's all sorts of tips in the book about how not to be annoying, right? And in other words, like how to build rapport properly with a customer, how to how to practice active listening with a customer, and things like that, because it's all about how you present yourself, really, that, and how you allow the customer to present themselves. If you're marching in and you're trying to get your agenda across without any care of how the customer, the situation of the customer at that moment, that comes across, and you just look selfish and self-serving. And so I give a lot of like question techniques, things like that, things about how when you phone people, to always leave a voicemail, the length of the voicemails to leave, and there's all sorts of just little rules that I follow for each step of the way. I even tell you, hey, if you have to go out for lunch with a customer, this is where you sit, this is what you do at the restaurant, this is how you act, right? And
right.
especially if you're an invited guest, right? How not to be a bad guest at a dinner.
Yeah.
And because a lot of people are new to they're new in
Oh, yeah.
sales, they get invited to these dinners and they don't know how to behave, right? And they think they do, but
Right.
they 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 learned their skills at McDonald's or something, right? And and so I go over all of those basics, and and how to get and stay motivated and things like that, right? And so a lot of what I try to coach people on is how not to be annoying. And because people have a low tolerance for being sold, or being someone pushing an agenda,
Yeah.
anything like that, right? And they smell it instantly. Like, I mean, if you've ever you've had probably lots of car buying experiences. I love relating it to car buying because most people can relate to it, right? And I
Right.
mean, I've had guys I've walked in and it's like before I've even he's even interacted with me, I'm already feeling bad. You know what I mean? I just want to leave. But
Right.
then there was this other guy who sold me like 3 of my cars in a row because he was such a pleasure to do business with. And I mean, what's the difference? Like, how do you bottle that guy's capability and and then sprinkle it on all the other guys? I don't, really, I don't know, but really he was just such a pleasure to work with. And he didn't act from a petty salesman way, or, a lack of interest or what have you. Right. And I mean, that particular guy got 3 cars sales from me, 3 in a row. Right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
And I'm sure you told everybody about them.
I did. My
They
sons bought
said they
cars
were
from
looking for.
him. Yeah. No, I did actually.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that you know, is important to remember is that, if who your client is or customer is has a good experience with you, they're going to tell everybody about it. Just like they're
Yeah,
going to tell everybody
exactly.
about it when they don't have a good experience.
That's right.
That's going to spread a heck of a lot faster.
Yeah. Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
as a business owner, and you've had a couple businesses and still kind of running one here now, time management always seems to be a big issue because, we're trying to, run the company and get the sales and kind of lead everything, make sure that our customer engagement is the way that we want it. Obviously in our other business responsibilities and stuff like that. How do you talk to the business owners about allocating their time and how they should do that?
Yeah. So, the the sort of philosophy that I use, and there's it's not that complicated, but it's not complicated at all, really, is the delegate and elevate strategy for what you should be working on when you're in if you're talking about leadership and managing your time, because oftentimes I'm talking to the head of a company or the head of a departments, and they've got people under them, and so I'm always coaching people to look at how they can delegate and elevate. And so what I first asked them to try to do is to figure out, what do I love doing and I'm great at, right? What do I love doing and I'm crappy at, right? What do I hate doing and I'm good at? And what do I hate doing and I'm crappy at, right? And then, and there's I don't want to steal all the credit for it because I didn't make it up, right? But I learned it from the EOS operating system model, and they break it down by percentages of where you should spend your time and how you should break down, your day, and track your activities over a period of time, a week, and then 2 weeks, and whatever, and see where your activities lie, and focus on that sweet spot of where you love it, where you're great at it, and things like that, right? And so where you can thrive. But when just managing my own day, I always try to do the hardest, most valuable thing next, right? And just continue to triage my day throughout the day, right? And and always be trying to work on the next most important thing, and try to avoid doing the easy things that make me feel busy, that make it look like I had a busy day. But like, because I work in an office and in a business environment, when I go home on the weekend or whatever, if I get all sorts of like honeydew chores or whatever, cut the grass, mount the shelves, put up the painting, like do this, do that, whatever. And I get all that done. I feel like I've just like cured world hunger in terms of, because I've done so many things, right? And I feel so productive. And so oftentimes there's like, things that you're good at, but you shouldn't be wasting your time. It should be done by somebody else, maybe a lower cost resource. Mm-hmm. And so I always coach people to make sure they're not wasting time on things that would be better done by somebody else, right? And focus on what's going to move the needle for you.
Right. Now, again, sticking with the business owner side of things, obviously, we face many challenges, and I'm going to say sales is probably the biggest challenge that all businesses, run into. But I guess, how do you tell the business owner about staying active in it and motivating the owner to want to keep pushing sales? I mean, obviously we all want it because we want money, but it's the process itself that I think we need to stay motivated with. And how do you coach people to do that?
Sorry, could you just ask how do we keep ourselves motivated to keep the team motivated?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, my best answer I can give right off the top of my head would be sort of, when you're put in a position of leadership, right? Your job is to lead, right? And yeah. And so often people lose sight of that, and they think that their job is like to be the, expert in all the little, like I'm the general manager, right? So finance reports to me, marketing reports to me, operations, production, all of the teams report to me. Am I an expert at finance, production, warehouse techniques? No. Right. And, but what I do need to do is provide decision making and authority for these people, so that they can get their jobs done, right? And to be, always to be providing them with the next thing they need in order to do their job, right? And I say, as a leader, like, if you've reached a point of perfect equilibrium as a leader, then you shouldn't have anything to do, right? Because everything should be done by everybody else perfectly, right? But of course, you never get to unicorn perfection.
I haven't found that yet. Let's put it that way.
Me neither. But when they come to you, they need you to act like you know what you're doing, even if you don't, right? They need you to make decisions in a timely manner. And you know what I'm saying? And a lot of times they don't, they may have the answer and they can share it with you, and you can authenticate it and authorize it, which is fine. Or they're looking for you for more mentorship and guidance, but you need to act as a leader and make decisions. That's I see that as your sort of number one requirement. And then if they can always count on you, then they tend to want to do a good job. And, when it comes to staying motivated, I mean, there's going to be times where you're probably fall off and you are feeling a little demotivated, but I would always suggest, if that's like during a day or whatever, go for a walk, change your environments, and do those kinds of things. Right. And, but there's a saying in the book where it applies to both the manager, the employee, all the stakeholders in a business or what have you. And it becomes, and I always says whenever someone says like, what's the most important thing you want to share from the book? And it's the chapter titled, "You only get forever to make another impression." Right. And so what I mean by that is, whenever anyone walks by you, whatever you're doing, you're making an impression, right? If you're the boss and you're not doing anything, you kind of look like a lazy boss, right? If you're the boss and you're walking by a sales guy and he's on Facebook, he kind of looks a bit lazy, right? And if he sees you doing it twice, well, you're a permanent bum, right? And you're not going to get, and they're like, "Oh, what's the big deal? I was on Facebook a couple of times." And I'm like, "Yeah." And now you're permanently lazy to that guy. Like, you're going to have to do a lot of extra work to claw back out of those. So, whenever you have an opportunity to make an impression on someone, make it a good one, not just the first one, like your mom told you, right? It's every impression. Right. And so same as a leader, right? If people are, if you feel the group's energy dying down or what have you, take a walk around the building, say hello to people, chit chat with somebody maybe in the warehouse that you normally never talk to, and say their name, how they doing, whatever. Talk to some department heads that maybe have nothing to do with you. Just say hello, how's it going? And just keep the connections going. Right. I find that to be really valuable. Right. And, yeah.
So, again, there is a ton of stuff, in the book, with the do's and don'ts, when going through this. What have I not asked you that you wish I had?
Well, usually I give you the answer I just gave you.
Right.
Yeah. So,
well, because that was going to be my question, but you answered it, so I couldn't get to ask it. So
yeah.
Now it's kind of like
the other story I have is is the story called $10 million in Diamonds. And it's a story about, I'll tell the quick version, but I worked for a guy in a jewelry store. He went and opened his own jewelry store. And 10 years later, I drove by the store and it was still there. And I was in my late 20s and I thought, I'm going to pop in and see if he remembers me. And I popped in. And he was an old Italian guy. He had polio from the 50s and he was very affected. He had a cane and, he was very like larger than life in terms of his persona and everything. And despite his handicap, and I said to him, how's it going? His name is Romeo, and he's going, and he says, "Oh, it's great. It's great." And I'm going, "How's business?" He's like, "Oh, it's so busy. It's so busy." He goes, "I'm so busy selling the watch." He says, "I could be selling at $10 million in the diamonds, but I'm too busy fixing all the watches." And so, he's in the back fixing watches, right? And I'm like saying to myself, like later, I'm like, why don't you just hire another watchmaker?
Right.
But he was so programmed to fix watches, that he couldn't see the forest for the trees, right? And so, don't miss that $10 million in diamonds when it's right in front of you, right? Work on the more important thing. It might be harder, but the reward will be there, right?
Right.
And
I think that goes back to something you talked about earlier. If there's something that someone else can do and you maybe at a lower, I'm going to call it, rate than what you are, then you want to pass that on to them and let them do that. And sometimes it's just empowering people to do a little bit more.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So if people like what they hear, they want to get your book and so forth, how can they reach out to you? Where can they find your book?
So best thing, you can find all my different links on my website, glennpoulos.com. And the easiest way, and on there's links to all the book places to get the book. That would be great if you got that. I appreciate it. And if you wanted to communicate with me in some way, if you go to LinkedIn, you can message me there. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn and other social media, but mainly LinkedIn, and happy to speak to anyone that reaches out there.
Great. I really appreciate your time today, Glenn.
Yeah, thank you.
I think, you know, you do have a wealth of knowledge, and your book does have many, many great tips for people that are either getting into sales or have been doing it for a long time and have kind of forgotten a lot of these things that you know, that you tell them that they should be doing.
Right. Yes. Thank you. It's
So
been great to be
appreciate
here.
your time.
Yeah.
Thanks. This week, our guest was Glenn Poulos, who is author and sales expert, along with the co-founder, vice president, and general manager of Gap Wireless Inc. Thank you, guys, and I'll see you next week.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.